All right, this is Top Declassified Podcast number 2. And this podcast, I'll be talking about my thoughts on the secret space program, specifically this notion of 20 years and back. All right. Okay, so let's get it started. Let's go back to the beginning of when this idea specifically of someone joining a military service, then being put to the side, brought aside by one of their superior officers, and they're told, hey, buddy, or hey, girlie, you have been selected for X, Y, and Z. You're going to serve a 20-year term out in space, right? Out in space. And you'll come back, okay? It'll be like you never even left, and everything will be exactly the same. Oh, and by the way, you're also going to have your pay, you're going to have your back pay, and this and that. So the very first mention of that specific concept, that specific idea, ever mentioned ever, was in the year 2000 by Mr. and Mrs. Ralph. And they released a series of books, and they also have a series of websites called the Mars Records and the Mars Force. Okay? And that was the very first time that was ever mentioned ever. Okay? Was in the year 2000. All right? Specifically, that concept, that idea of someone joining a military and then suddenly they're put into like this separate category and they're told these things and then they go off into space and all this and that. Okay? And so my ideas are not that it's fake. I think it's very real. But instead, I believe that the 20 and back program, okay, obviously that's not the official term for it. Whatever the name is, I don't care. But the idea of it, the concept of it, I believe is real. I believe it's true. But I think it's a limited hangout. And what are my reasons for that? Okay, well, let's just think about everything in a logical way, in a logical fashion. As I pull up my chart here, I have a chart. So let's look at the chart that I wrote regarding the 20 and back. Okay. And so I see three logical fallacies already there. Okay. So the one is called the Overton window. So with the Overton window, basically this researcher came up with this idea called, and it was named after him, Overton. Okay, Mr. Overton. And with the Overton window, it's basically a selection of ideas that are within the purview of being talked about. And then anything outside of that few, like anything too far outside of the allowed talking points, are spoken down to, ridiculed, ignored, attacked, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So 20 and back is within the Overton window of this whole disclosure movement. Okay, I mean, I have my own ideas about the disclosure movement. I think that this disclosure is fake. disclosure, and I have reasons for believing that, but this is outside of the topic right now. Okay. So, what is outside of the 20 and back? Okay. What's outside of the 20 and back? What's outside of this Overton window are other projects, other programs, classified, United States government classified, also governments of other nations and countries classified programs and projects that involve not being returned. It's not just where they go for 20 and back and that's it. There are people that are also taken and they're not returned. Meaning, the 20 and back is mostly people that sign up for it. But there's projects where people don't sign up for it, and they're taken and they're never returned. They're kidnapped, they're abducted, and they're never returned. So that's the Overton window. The second one is survivorship bias. So let's say you have people that are signing up for this 20 and back program, okay, and they die on the mission. Okay, what about them? Obviously, they don't get to come back. So what about the people that die out there? That's survivorship bias. And then the last logical fallacy, so let's go over them. Overton window, survivorship bias. And then the last one is selection bias. Okay, so where is the selection bias? Okay. So the selection bias has to do with what is left unsaid. Okay? What is left unsaid? What is left out? Okay? That's what it has to do with. What is left out is the people that die, they don't come back, obviously. They're dead. The people that are there for life, so they live out there until they pass away. Okay? So that's selection bias. So I believe that the 20 and back program, the disclosure aspect of it on the online alternate media platforms, which I believe are mostly controlled, not all controlled, but I believe a good number of it is controlled. I believe that it's a psychological operation in the form of a limited hangout. Okay? And Trump announcing the United States Space Force conveniently, just as all of this stuff was really starting to fester up and flare up. Okay? There's a reason why he announced the U.S. Space Force now and not some other president. I believe Trump is 100% evil and bad, as I believe all presidents are 100% evil and bad, because I believe all presidents are 100% controlled by the real rulers of this world, which are not flesh and blood men and women. So no, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not an Obama supporter. I'm not a supporter of any president. They're all evil. And I don't care what anybody says. They are 100% all evil. And no, I don't believe Trump was put in power by God. No, I'm not that stupid to believe that. So, with the U.S. Space Force, with Trump announcing the U.S. Space Force, all by design, he was told to do that. He didn't come up with it on his own because he is controlled. He's a puppet. So, with Trump's Space Force, him announcing this, right at the same time all of this 20 and back stuff is coming out, it's not a coincidence. It's an obvious operation. It's an obvious play, and it's an obvious ploy to do what? To normalize what is already going on, which is to normalize the already military assets of space. So to normalize the militarization of space. All right? It's already been militarized. Okay? But just like how it's been the plan by the real rulers of the world to slowly drip feed out different things, the Space Force announcement is one of them. All right? The point of it is to bring that about as normal. Okay? So what's already been brought about as normal is killing and murder on the earth. But now killing and murder has to be normalized out in space. So the whole point of the 20 and Back program coming out, it was actually co-opted by the satanic rulers of the earth. A decade and a half, or about a decade after the original Ralphs came out with their story, it was co-opted. They waited about a decade and some odd years to co-opt it and turn it into a psychological limited hangout operation, combined with the U.S. Space Force announcement by Puppet Trump. It's very obvious what's going on. What's going on is there's already military operations and programs that are going on out there in space, and it has to be brought into the public consciousness of the mass public, of the population of the people, in order to accept whatever the satanic government says regarding what's going on out there in space, to bring about the one world government, antichrist system against God, Jesus Christ. Because what's really going on is a satanic plot against people to destroy them. And this is just one small part of the overall plan to bring about the Antichrist. That's literally what it is. For people that don't know about God and who God is, they are going to be very surprised when they see God. But for those that do know about God, they will understand what I'm saying. And so this message is for whoever can hear it.